This story began once long ago in the homeland of all wizards, in the beautiful country of Ake. In those days, people who had incredible power lived in this country. But later, God decided to deprive these people of magic, and the great Ahea lost its power and influence. And since the world was angry, Ahea immediately became a tidbit for invaders. And for a country that is not capable of defending itself, there was only one way to stay afloat. This is marriage with your worst enemy, trampling your own pride. On that distant evening, in the royal palace of Ake, it was restless. The second prince of the kingdom could not restrain emotions. This young man named Jenner Katadal was very outraged by the decision of his sister. Then, the young man standing by the window said, "Submit the tone, Jenner." These words belonged to Jenner's older brother, Dequita Katatel, who was the first prince of the kingdom of Ahus. "But brother, this is a complete absurdity. To send a sister to the empire of Radon, right into the hands of this Kvanah. At least you know what people say. Ahea sold the princess to strangers to prevent the war. The country gave it to a Torn to be a tyrant who kills dozens of people a day for fun." Then the sister slowly looked up and said calmly, "Jenner, stop. The first princess of the kingdom of Ake, the Usfur Katatel, was beautiful, like a fabulous flower, even in sadness." She softly continued, saying that Jenner should not blame her older brother, because she herself insisted on this marriage. The Usfur said a little firmly, "This is mine and only my decision, so stop." And then, in an absolutely confident voice, the girl interrupted the young man, who tried to object, saying that she was in perfect order, after which the princess added that he should take care of his father and obey his brother. Suddenly, Jenner powerlessly hugged his sister's knees, and she, in turn, said, "You must be strong." Meanwhile, the first prince, who was silent at the window, all this conversation, looked sadly at his brother and sister. Looking at the people's relatives, a broken voice, the Katator said, the Dikwit. "Usfir, thank you." And then Dikwit continued, "Thank you for always defending Ahea, and for this difficult decision, however, thanks." Usfir lowered her eyes and answered quietly that she was born a princess, and it would be foolish to think that she would marry love. Then Usfir added that marriage can save the kingdom from the threat from the empire of Radon. And soon the day came when the noble people of the country gathered in the main church of Ake to attend the ceremony. The princess in the wedding dress was charming, and her groom looked courageously and solemn. Conflicting feelings took possession of the girl. When the question was whether she was ready to take Kvanah's husband, she mechanically answered yes. The princesses were confused, and the heart was ready to jump out of the chest. After all, in front of her was not just a man who was preparing to become her husband. The emperor stood in front of her. Concluding the ceremony, the bishop said, "Before the gaze of the goddess Fahar, who created this world and destroy it, I declare you husband and wife." The priest, bowing his head and making half a step ago, said that the groom could kiss his bride. The Kvanah's hand raised the edge of the veil with a slow and delicate movement, opening the girl's face. Usfir raised her eyes and met her gaze with her. From that moment, legal spouse. The Emperor Radonsky said quietly, but imperiously, "Close your eyes, princess." The man bent to the girl, who obediently closing his eyes, gently attracting her face to him. The newlyweds' lips met for a moment, causing in the hearts and souls of both a whirlwind of unexpected and extraordinary emotions. And the couple froze, slowly moving away from each other, so as not to interrupt this moment that excited them. Finally, they came to their senses a little, and the man gently and sympathetically asked if his bride was in order. Usfir was absorbed in emotions and could not immediately answer Kvanah Radonsky, realizing that from that moment she became a married woman. She realized that now that the alliance with the emperor was fastened with a kiss of the oath, there was no way back. As soon as the ceremony ended, Kvanah Radonsky put his bride in the imperial cafeteria, and they went to the Empire of Radon. While the motorcade was on the way, the Usfir reasoned that her husband arranged too much a commotion with a hasty departure from Akaya. She suggested that since Kvanah himself founded the Empire Radon, he was not just to leave his brainchild unattended. But the girl doubted whether he was really worried about the empire and his subjects. She remembered the rumors that said that the emperor is a tyrant, a monster and a killer. The princess opened the carriage window so that fresh air would beat her face, And when she looked out of the window forward, she saw her husband. The emperor was a beautiful and stately man, and the girl thought that he, as if God himself in the flesh, and I, stuck in my golden cage, look unworthy and sparkle against his background. Yusfir for a long time watched the magnificent figure of Kvanah of Radonsky at the head of the motorcade, and she tried to understand what she was compared to him, the great Emperor Radon. Then the princess remembered that once long ago, a great silver forest, a guardian deity, revealed her mercy to the royal family of Ake. Since then, in every generation of the royal family, one wizard awakened, and this wizard defended the country, thanks to the force given to him. Looking at small magic lights that appeared in her palm, the girl thought that this time a wizard fell to her. She tightly squeezed the lights in her palms, realizing that it was only worthless crumbs and not real magic. But the main question that the princess was interested in was whether she could cope with her new role. Yusfir thought about what would be done to her if the emperor's interest in her suddenly disappears. At that moment, an obscure figure appeared between the trees surrounding the road in a dark hoodie. The figure extended forward a palm in which a clot of energy of dirty red color appeared. The princess noticed this movement from the carriage and, not feeling danger, approached the window. At that moment, the red arrow unexpectedly pierced the crew window, heading right into the girl. The motorcade stopped, and Kvanah Radonsky galloped back to find out what happened. The guard informed him that the carriage was unexpectedly attacked by an arrow from the forest. The emperor leaned through the window to the Yusfir, trying to understand whether she was in order. But when he opened the door of the carriage, he saw an arrow breaking the girl's heart. In the fireplace hall of the royal castle of Ake, the voice of Princess Yusfir sounded, who told Dequit that she was scared. The girl explained that she did not want to get married and leave for someone else's empire. She begged her older brother and asked if there was any other way out, to which the first prince replied that it was painful for him to see his sister's tears, but they couldn't do anything else. A country that has no army, no money, no territories that can be bought off can resist the empire. If only the keeper could defend the country as before. But this is impossible. Daiquit said with regret that this is why they are forced to make such sacrifices. And now, lying on the floor of carriages with an arrow in the heart of Yusfir, thought that the brother was right that evening. If I had the true magic of the keepers, and would be at least a little more useful, this would not have happened. The girl's eyes closed, and she lost consciousness. Only from somewhere from afar, she heard a voice that called her and asked to wake up. And suddenly, in an instant, Yusfir came to her senses and abruptly opened her eyes. She was very surprised, because her heart was just breaking through an arrow. The girl could not understand what was happening to her. She turned around and saw her husband, who was sitting at the door of the carriage. Kvanah Radonsky was in despair and repeated one word. "Please, please." At this moment, the Yusfir realized that the person whom the emperor holds in her arms was herself. The security tried to inform Klanahu that the empress could no longer save, but he did not hear them. The man who attacked the girl said, "It was stupid." The emperor rose from his knees and angrily said that he had never believed these dirty northerners. "I should not agree to this absurd game in a happy marriage. Well, now everything will be different." And then Yusfir realized that the world awaits something very terrible. Emperor Radonsky said loudly that their marriage union was now terminated. And then, having clasped his teeth, he added that Ahius would pay for his betrayal. The emperor ordered the accompaniment to hurry up with a return to Radon, and Yusfir rushed after he stopped him. But she only saw the back of the retiring Kvanah Radonsky. Trying to catch up with her husband, the girl did not immediately realize what was happening to her. Suddenly, she felt pain, as if her body was torn to pieces. Then Yusfir realized with horror that he could not leave the place where she died, and she only had a pain from understanding what would happen to Ahaya if she could not cope. Suddenly, the princess heard a familiar voice next to her, which he said, "Poor Usfir." A man squatted near an abandoned carriage said, "Your blood has not even had time to dry." Yes, it was her older brother and the first prince of the kingdom, Dikwit Katatel. Yusfir was relieved to think that her brother came to save her. At this moment, another person asked Divit what he feels, developing a plan for so long and now completing it, to which Dikwit, with an unpleasant smile, replied that this is an indescribable feeling, to finally get rid of a headache. The princess was shocked, not understanding what headache her brother was talking about. Meanwhile, the first prince expressed regret that there was no way to identify the corpse. After that, a man in a dark hoodie assured the Dikwit that he hit the heart with an arrow. Listening to these conversations, Yusfir could not believe either his eyes or his ears. Dikwit reminded the man in the dark about the second part of the transaction, and that he was promised to give strength in order to overthrow the Emperor Radon. In response, the person confirmed that everything was in force, and that the war, in which Ahea would defeat, will soon break out. He predicted that the Dikwit would become the ruler of the continent, and the name of the first prince will be chanted in all corners of the world. Dikwit only regretted that Kvanah took the body of Yusfir, and since she was a sorceress, her body could come in handy. The girl could not believe that she hears these words from her older brother. She tried her best to realize why everything happened that way. After all, Yusfir remembered that in childhood, Dikwit treated her with great love and care, and it was mutually. But unfortunately, finding answers to these questions was above her strength. As that man predicted, after a while the war broke out, and Yusfir, being unable to leave the place where she died, continued to think. It seemed to the girl that she got into hell on the ground, and she wanted to understand why the gods punished her, and for which they forced us to look at this nightmare day and night. Around the princess there were only pain, blood, suffering, and death. The war continued, and her brother, who united with another northern kingdom, gradually began to lose position. Dikwit lost Kvanah to Radonsky, a battle for the battle. The beautiful landscapes of Ahea, its forests and rivers, everything has lost its meaning in the face of war. People who were more likely loved by a girl in front of her eyes, as if someone from above laughed at the Yusfir, so for the fact that she could not die properly. In the third year of the war, Dikwit Katatel appeared before the army of Emperor Radonsky. The first prince, kneeling, called Kvanah a dirty, worthless slave. "I curse you, Kvanah Radonsky, for depriving me of my family, and now you are depriving the kingdom." To which the emperor only contemptuously muttered through his teeth, "Go ahead, king, curse! Just keep in mind that I will find your soul and kill you again." And the Yusfir, who was given to see this meeting, cried out with horror, because at the next moment the Kvanah's sword was painted red, and the lifeless Dikwit Katater fell to the ground. Then the guards asked the emperor what to do next, and he replied that this was a stupid question. After that, Kvanah Radonsky gave a short and hard team, "Burn everything here." The exhausted princess appealed to her deceased older brother. "You killed everyone, my father, Jenner. Did you really want that to end like this?" And suddenly, doomed hysterical laughter, Yusfir interrupted her words, shaking the silence. And then the girl began to frantically ask for the guardian deity, a silver forest, for help. With tears in her eyes and pain in her voice, she asked to hear her pleas. The princess persuaded the gods to merge and save Ahu, offering in return her own soul. "Oh, great gods, give me a chance to change everything." And suddenly, a miracle happened. A divine voice answered a desperate girl. Suddenly, she saw a warm magic light descending to her from heaven. Then the voice of Mrs. Silver Forest said gently, "Yusfir, my child." Suddenly, the princess woke up and saw her father and her younger brother Jenner leaning over her. Seeing that Yusfir opened her eyes, they could not hold back joyful exclamations. The girl looked at loved ones with wide eyes, unable to believe her happiness. She was perplexed. "Father, Jenner, how is it possible?" Sitting on her bed next to Jenner in the royal castle of Ahea, the princess still could not believe in the reality of what was happening. After all, she saw with her own eyes that her father and younger brother died in that bloody war. At that moment, the princess saw her father quietly talking with a court doctor. The doctor said quietly, "Yusfir is in order. The color of the eyes and hair can only change in the case of true keepers, but I do not know all the details." The girl knew that magic woke up at her 10 years. But did this mean that she returned to the past 10 years ago? The princess was tormented by doubts. "This is impossible. I just went crazy and I have hallucinations." And then Jenner turned to his sister and said warmly that she should not hurt and stay with him always. Yusfir was deeply touched by the words of a little brother. She involuntarily reached for the boy to hug him. And I realized that this is not a dream, because it could touch it. Feelings surpassed the princess, and she pressed herself against Jenner's, hugging her. Yusfir realized that Madame Silver Forest heeded her prayers, and hot tears of joy flowed down the girl's cheeks. Clutching her little brother tightly, the princess whispered loudly, which would definitely take advantage of the chance given to her. Father heard this whisper and turned around, carefully looking at his daughter. Then he went and gently laid his hand on the princess's shoulders, soothing her. Yusfir firmly knew that this time she could definitely protect her family and her country. The girl understood that for the task she would need powerful magic. She realized that she should become the strongest keeper in history. In time immemorial, the goddess of the world Fahar was a younger sister named Silver Forest, after the death of which her body was buried in the forest itself at the edge of the world, where it was revived in the form of a huge silver tree. It was next to this forest that the kingdom of Ake was founded, and Mrs. Silver Forest became his deity defender and periodically granted people her blessing. Her chosen ones received the title of keepers, as well as recognition of the people and greatness for their service. But this was a very long time ago. And then the moment came when all the magic disappeared, and with it the protection that the lady surrounded people. Ahea, who lost the support of her deity, was on the right path to death, and everyone was immensely happy when magic awakened in the little Princess Yusfir. People were very happy and praised the girl all the time. It has not yet become clear that her magic was not capable of anything. The princess could only talk with plants, so she believed that her power was not completely awakened. The plants were very kind and friendly to the little sorceress, but they were not in their power to help Yusfir to cope with the reproaches and accusations that she received every day. In a past life, the princess only watched the fall of the kingdom, doing nothing, but now everything will be different. Yusfir thought, if Madame Silver Forest really fulfilled my desire and sent me to the past, then she had to endow me with special power, in which case it turns out I am special. So the girl reasoned, engaged in magic in the royal palace. And suddenly something incredible happened, forcing us to freeze. She could not believe it, and her eyes widened in surprise. In a flower pot opposite the girl, a small green sprout with 3 leaves appeared from the ground. And when surprise and delight passed, the girl began to be perplexed. Is it all that she was capable of now? Did the lady correctly understood my prayers and returned me to life, giving me only these abilities? Of course, this is better than in a past life, but this is not enough. Yusfir realized that the power that she has now will have too little. I can't prevent Kvanahu to destroy my kingdom. Submitted into these sad thoughts, the girl sat, looking at a small sprout in a pot. At that moment, a familiar voice rang behind, which made her sharply turn around. Hello, Yusfir! Near the doors to the chambers stood her older brother, Dikwit Katatel. The appearance of the prince was so unexpected that the girl was able to pronounce only one word. Brother. Dikwit enthusiastically said that he heard about the awakening of strength from the princess. The first prince expressed sympathy, as he heard about severe pains in Yusfir. But in her head, the phrase of his brother from a past life sounded. It seemed to the girl that in front of her, the Dikwit who wanted to take her dead body to take advantage of it. Therefore, she abruptly repulsed her hand, which the prince was going to touch her, causing him complete bewilderment. Dikwit looked at his sister with full surprise eyes. The girl became very embarrassed, and she quickly apologized, referring to the fact that she was still not good. She said, apparently, magic somehow influenced my body. I hope you understand me, brother. The prince made an apology. Of course, everything is in order, sister. You must have been really easy for you now. Then Dikwit gently took his sister by the hands and wished her a speedy recovery. But now that Yusfir learned about her brother's real motives, his every word seemed to her a pretense. Meanwhile, Dikwit said that she should tell her some unpleasant news. The princess was very surprised, not understanding what was being discussed. Of course, you have become a keeper, but many still cannot believe that the Silver Forest blessed their people. This is terrible, but people are still not sure that their princess really has magic. And since these words outraged the Yusfir, the Divot hastened to assure that he personally did not doubt it at all. And then, expressively looking at the sprout in the pot, continued, But you must understand these people, sister. Yes, your magic has awakened, but what if you are not able to use it? The princess had nothing to say in response to her brother. Therefore, Dikwit continued, do not be upset, Yusfir. We should not have such great hopes on you. In the girl's mind, a picture from a past life surfaced when she joyfully informed her brother that she could use magic. Little Yusfir told Dikwit what she spoke with flowers in the garden, and asked what she could do with this now. But, unexpectedly, the older brother did not share her childhood delight. This is not magic, but an ordinary trick, Usfir. Think about what people will say when they find out that you are only capable of it. Then he advised his sister not to tell anyone about his strength, promising that he would protect and take care of her if she remains next to him. And then people in the kingdom began to whisper that the princess could not use the power, and that they did not believe in her. Dequit promised to help her, but all this ended with a treacherous arrow in her heart. Usfir plunged into these memories so much that the prince was alarmed and asked if everything was in order with her. The girl wanted to answer, but at that moment it seemed to her that she had a spirit of her herself from her past life. The ghost of Usfir laid her hands on the princess's shoulders and asked if she was going to take revenge in order to protect Ahea. "What are you capable of, Usfir? After all, the mistress did not choose you, but only wanted you to go through this hell again." The girl struggled to convince herself that this was just an illusion. The ghost convinced Usfir that the guardian deity just plays with her. At one point, gathering his strength, the princess pushed her ghost from herself. Daiquit, who watched his sister, could not understand what was happening. Usfir slowly came to her senses, gradually getting rid of unpleasant obsession. And to the next question of her brother, whether everything was in order with her, he answered in the affirmative. The princess realized that she definitely needed to meet with Mrs. Silver Forest to find out what she wanted from her. In the northern forest, on the edge of the world, there was a royal carriage, from which the Usfir came out, accompanied by 2 guards. The ice wind blew, and it was very cold, so the guards suggested that the princess return to the castle, fearing for her. But the girl answered them that he could not turn back yet. A little earlier, Usfir turned to her father with a request to allow her to visit the guardian divine in the northern forest. The princess claimed that since she was awakened, this would be the right decision. But the father objected that only the king has the right to meet with the Silver Forest, and then only once. The king said that the lady is very friendly, but she also has periods when she is like a fierce snowstorm. "Once I visited her, begging to revive your mother, Usfir, but the lady did not heed my request. She said that the revival of the dead is contrary to the laws of the goddess Fahar, and I lost your mother forever, giving up the last forces of the northern forest." The father was afraid that something could happen after this trip, but she promised to return if something was going wrong. Since the mistress herself gave the princess her blessing, the girl believed that the meeting would help her understand what to do for Ahea. The king doubted for a long time, but in the end decided to allow his daughter to use this chance. And then the princess gave a small bright red amulet with words, "Take it with you, the Usfir." Father explained that this is an artifact that gives heat, the creation of the ancient dwarfs. "Once upon a time, I bought it for Rosanna, your mother. I hope he will help you." And now, feeling the cold breath of the northern forest, the girl realized that the amulet did not allow her body temperature to decrease. She was immensely grateful to her parents, who protected her from the cold on the edge of the world. Usfir firmly knew that she would never allow himself to lose loved ones, and for this, she was absolutely ready to change her fate. In the current realities, the princess simply had no other choice. She knelt down on the ice soil, intending to use her ability to talk with plants. The girl did not care how much magic had. She stubbornly asked her to give her an answer. Usfir gathered all her forces, addressing the plants of the northern forest. "If someone hears me, please, I need to meet with Madame Northern Forest." Kneeling and giving all her magical forces, the princess continued to beg her to let her in to the mistress. And suddenly, something incredible happened. The snowstorm began to retreat, and the sky cleared. The girl was shocked by this and saw the parting trees, realizing that she was allowed to enter. And then she ordered the guards to stay in place and wait for her return. The guards fulfilled the order, and Usfir entered the deeper of the northern forest. The princess immediately felt that between the trees much colder than outside. And soon the girl heard the voice calling her, and saw a large silver tree. Usfir realized that in front of her is Madame a Silver Forest. She asked the princess what brought the girl here in this life. Hearing a familiar voice, Usfir realized that she was not mistaken, and this is the lady talking to her when she was returning to the past. After that, Usfir dared to ask, since she was returned to life, what she could do for the Lady Guardian Ahea. And since she gave her soul for her rebirth, can she ask for a little more magical power? But the mistress's answer was unexpected. Yusfir, it seems to me that you were mistaken. All this time I watched you, princess, but I have never heard your prayers. You know that I can fulfill only one desire for you, to make you Queen Ahe. The confused Yusfir answered quietly, Yes, but I heard your voice when I returned to the past, and so I thought that you want to entrust me to something important. But the lady was inexorable. Enough, Yusfir. Return to the palace. Your body is not able to withstand this cold. From artifacts in this forest will not be a scent soon, and you are the same as your father. But the girl firmly replied to these words of the deity that she did not care. Better I will die here than I will simply watch the war and do nothing, as in a past life. Please, lady, I want to save my people and my loved ones. Then, having knelt down, the princess added that she was simply obliged to protect Ahea. Tell me what I can do. I do not want to hide behind other people's backs and palace walls. The fact is, the Usfire, that your magic is so weak, because I no longer have the strength to give them to the keepers. Therefore, how hard your past life was. To some extent, I am to blame. And so I decided to share with you my life force, Yusfir. I think you really can change the future of Akai. And then the magic light of a large silver tree rushed directly to the girl. At that moment, the princess again heard the insidious voice of herself from a past life. The lady said that now nothing will stop you, and you can do everything. But what can you really? Then the insinuating voice continued. After all, in the end, you will still suffer and die, as then. But Yusfir, gathering all her will, replied that she wouldn't be so, and that she doesn't care if she would die or not. And then the girl pressed her palms to the cold ground, from which the shoots of the green vine began to break through at the same moment. The sprouts quickly turned into trees, interwoven with each other, and Yusfir felt the magical power overwhelming it. Rising from the knees, the princess loudly and confidently said that she was no longer going to be afraid. On the main gate of the border of the kingdom of Ake on the weekend, it was very calm, and even to some extent boring. The only guard could not resist and yawned sweetly, immediately receiving a strong slap in the guard from the head of the guard. The guardsman immediately regretted his awkwardness and tried to apologize to the authorities, who screams that there was no weekend on the border. The soldier began to babble. You work hard today, Mr. Chief of Guardians. And he turned around, hearing his steps behind, and stretched out, welcoming the approaching princess, the keeper of Ahe. The inhabitants considered a 20-year-old Yusfir. The Katator considered the mercy of the goddess Fahar in their kingdom. The number of victims has significantly reduced since you personally began to strengthen our borders, Your Majesty. Yusfir replied that this was her duty, and she is glad to be useful to her country. The security chief was very pleased. The prickly vine with which you wrapped our walls help a lot in protection from enemies. And arrows and almost impenetrable shields that you made for us are simply magnificent. Perhaps this sounds ridiculous, but sometimes it seems to me that you and I went through the war together, Your Majesty. The mention of the war caused a girl's mixed feelings in the soul. She remembered the terrible events that had to endure in a past life. Then the Yusfir answered the guardsman that he was more insight than it seemed, but he did not understand her comments. 10 years have passed since the princess returned to the past, and all this time she continued to study the magic, without sparing her time and effort. After meeting with Madame Yusfir, I wanted to be able to more than just grow protective plants in a couple of moments. And she worked on herself at the limit of the forces of her body. The girl knew that she had too little time, and did not allow herself to slow down for a moment. Meanwhile, the news about the conquests of Kvanah and his growing empire quickly reached the princess, and in this life, Yusfir understood that soon a young and successful emperor would get to Ahea. And also the girl realized that, how much do not strengthen military power, her small kingdom is not able to withstand the Radon Empire. But the princess firmly decided to do everything to protect her country. Ahea will not fall for anything. At that moment, a messenger ran up to them and said that terrible news had been received. A letter came from Kvanah Radonsky. Yusfir was sure that she would not turn off her journey, even if she had to get married again. The valet read out a letter in which only a few words were written. I need a princess, nothing more. Such an impudent statement caused a violent reaction among the members of the council who was present when reading a letter. But the cries of the inadmissibility of even thoughts to give the princess into the hands of the enemy caused her only sarcasm. because in a past life they have already done this. The letter of Kvanah exactly repeated his letter from a past life, which made Yusufzai think, the slave who became the emperor. Perhaps in a past life he went the same path of humiliation and universal contempt, like me. And perhaps that's why he became such a cold and cruel person? However, Yusufzai decided that this was not her business. It was more important that the gentleman believed that the army of Akai is able to withstand the army of the empire. The crown prince Dikwit Katatel, with theatrical sincerity, opposed the sister to send this monster in the clutches of this monster. But I am the king and should be impartial. But as a true ruler, first of all, I must think about his people, right? And then he told the girl that as the keeper of Ohe, she should understand him. Yusufzai understood that he just wanted to send her, but said aloud, "Of course, brother. Besides, there is one circumstance." She looked Dequita directly in the eye and said, "I really want to marry Kvanah Radonsky." And after only a week, a wedding ceremony was scheduled in Ahi, on the eve of which the Usfir retired in its chambers. The girl quite coldly met the Dikwit, who entered her without an invitation. "What brought you, brother?" The crown prince invited her to talk to hearts with her beloved brother in the end, to which Yusufzai asked him not to hesitate. After that, Dikwit put a necklace with a blue stone in front of her on the table, and the girl was surprised why she was for her. A brother with easy sarcasm suggested that she read more, since it was not just a necklace, but an artifact of communication. "Keep it with you, Yusufzai. He will allow you to contact me at any moment, wherever you are," and added a conspiratorial tone. "While you will be in the empire, take out all the weaknesses of Kvanah and inform them to me." This phrase aroused a complete bewilderment in the girl. Yusufzai recalled that they now have an alliance, but Dikwit explained that their marriage was just a cover for cunning plans. The princess excited by this expressed fears. "But if we are revealed, a real war may begin." And the young king answered her with an insidious smile. "You are so naive, sister. I'm getting ready for war now." The brother said that he was waiting for the possibility of an attack on Radon, in conspiracy with other kingdoms of the north, and also has a powerful ally. If we prepare, then to trample the Kvanah and his empire will not be difficult. Yusufzai was surprised to himself that she had not guessed about a powerful ally right away, because his brother could not get magical objects without help. And this meant that on the side of Dikwit, there was a strong wizard, capable of creating artifacts. And again, a vision from a past life visited a girl. Is he really again, and my brother wants to untie the war? Meanwhile, the pause dragged on, and Dequite recalled that her answer was waiting. Yusufzai realized that the refusal of her brother would not solve her problem. He will simply kill her, as in a past life, and the whole situation will happen again. Are all efforts in vain, and I cannot change anything? The princess tried to understand whether the future is so invariably, with any attempts to prevent future troubles and misfortunes. Dikwit sympathetically asked, did the Yusufzai really believed that her marriage with Kvanah would solve all the problems overnight? Then he slapped his forehead. Poor thing, you really do not know the whole truth. And his brother handed her a secret document, which he brought specifically for her. And then he explained that, according to this document, the keepers cannot have children, as they give themselves to the Silver Forest. You will not be able to use magic outside Ahai, and you will never become a mother. Yusufzai said that it was a lie, but her brother replied that she lost her motherhood as soon as Madame Silver Forest chose her. This is not a lie, but I found a document in the most secret part of the library where only the king can enter. Imagine how Kvan is angry when he finds out that his wife will not be able to give birth to him heirs. He will be in such rage that he will definitely want to take revenge on Ahi for this meanness. But the princess could not believe and screamed, "Enough to lie, brother!" To which Dickett suggested that she think about why there are not a single mention of the descendants of the guardians in history textbooks, and Yusufzai realized with horror that this might be true. Can't I prevent the war in this life? In the early morning, on the day of the wedding by the river, horsemen stopped on the road to Achaia. The guard tried to convince Emperor Radonsky that they could attack at any time as soon as they crossed the border. Just think, in these forests, killers, thieves, deserters are hidden, and you are not even in armor. But Kvanah interrupted him. Enough of this nonsense, better give me clothes. I can't appear in front of the princess with a layer of sweat and road dust on the skin, right? At this time, the Eosphere stood on the castle's balcony, not paying attention to the morning coolness. She waited for the emperor to arrive. The princess was pale with experiences due to the upcoming wedding ceremony. The night before, Daiquit, leaving her chambers, invited the girl to carefully consider their conversation. And Eosphere immediately went to the library, where she spent all night, and found out that everything that the brother said about the keepers was true. According to legend, the children of wizards always inherit the power of at least one of their parents. Therefore, when Eosphere heard that the empire was offering a marriage, she decided that Kvan simply wanted an heir with magic. But the Silver Forest gives the magic of the keepers, and the princess, being the keeper, cannot have children. Standing on the balcony and discussing the current situation, the girl heard a noise at the gate of the palace. The princess rushed to the edge of the balcony to look down, what scared her maid. Downstairs on the main alley, she saw a procession, ahead of which Kvanah Radonsky rode. A surge of emotions swept over the girl, making her heart knock faster. And the next moment, she met with the eyes with Emperor Radon, Kvanah. In anticipation of the ceremony, Eosphere tried to find the answer, how to preserve the union when Kvan finds about its vigility. And of course, the girl was tormented by the question, can she really not be able to prevent the war, no matter how hard she tried? Daiquit did not kill me, as in a past life, but offered to join him, sharing information about the keepers in order to position him. So, he believes that I can benefit and help his plans to be realized. And if I play up my brother, then most likely they will not kill me. Then do not rush. I need to show Kvanahu that I am a good person, and he must find out the secret of the keepers. At that moment, the doors to the chambers of the Eosphere opened, and on the threshold the emperor appeared in a frontline uniform. He took a few steps and restrainedly greeted the girl, indicating a slight bow with her head. "Princess!" Eosphere sincerely answered Kvanah. "Glad to meet, your majesty." Then the emperor held out his hand to the princess, who recoiled a little from surprise. Kvanah delicately touched the girl, expressing confidence and admiring her. His eyes carefully looked at the Eosphere, solving the mood and emotions of the girl. Finally, Kvanah removed his hand and said calmly, "It seems that our future union does not please you." The princess hastily tried to object, but the emperor replied that beautiful words would not hide the lie. And when Eosphere again tried to justify himself, he offered to begin not to contact him in the title. He told a surprised girl that he was not very versed in secular manners, but he did not like your imperial majesty. The princess was completely discouraged by these words of Kvanah. "But you yourself turned to me according to the title." And when she tried to remember whether the emperor talked to her in a past life, he suggested turning to each other by name. Eosphere realized that in a past life, they had not seen before the wedding, so there was no communication between them in advance. The princess felt a surge of emotions when Klanami gently uttered her name, and since the girl continued to be silent, the emperor clarified whether she knew his name. Eosphere tried to understand what was happening to her, so she could only briefly answer the emperor. "Excuse me, Kvan." Meanwhile, the moment came to gather at the ceremony, and the faithful maid Cecilia could not restrain her tears. Standing in front of the mirror in a wedding dress and admiring herself, the princess asked her assistant not to cry. "But it's so sad that you have to get married like this." And continuing to look at herself in the mirror, Eosphere noted that her current wedding dress is still quite unusual. And when Cecilia hugged the princess, bursting with tears, she asked the maid to calm down, saying that she was not going to death, although it seemed to Eosphere not far from the truth, given that being in the Empire, she would risk her life every day. "I will have to hide all the time there, that I can never give Klanah the desired offspring." The princess understood that they were not a couple, although all the time of the ceremony, the emperor gently held her hand in his own. The priest read already familiar words. "Before the gaze of the goddess Fahar, who created this world and destroy it." And Eosphere thought that he and Klanah were more likely enemies who had a chance to encounter a battlefield. After the words that you can kiss the spouse, the groom, like the last time, gently raised the edge of the veil of the bride. And looking at him, the girl caught herself thinking that in her last life, she noticed how beautiful a man in front of her. Eosphere remembered that even then she considered the emperor divinely beautiful, but her eyes saw him during the war. She tried to say to herself that this is not the union of two loving people, but only a means of achieving peace for Achaia. At that moment, Kvan bowed and gently attracted the girl to her. The lips of men and women met in a sweet and hot kiss. From surprise and embarrassment, Yusfir tried to stop her husband. Kvanov looked up from the girl and looked deep into her eyes. Those present at the ceremonies froze without breathing. Watching this moment, only the divot did not express any emotions. As through the fog, the princess heard the question of her husband. "Everything is fine?" And without letting go of the bride, Kvanah Radonsky again uttered her name. Yusfir. At the end of the emperor's ceremony, the emperor quickly began to gather on the return trip, that I even had to cancel the wedding banquet. It seemed to the princess that they left after the wedding even faster than in a past life. The girl looked thoughtfully at the windows of the royal castle of Ake, and her hand mechanically touched the artifact, which gave her the daiquit. He noticed that Yusfir took the artifact with her. "I see that you chose cooperation with me, which means you chose Ake. This is the right decision." But the girl did not share the joy of the crown prince about this. At that moment, the voice of Klanak behind her said that she looks thoughtful and saddened. The emperor noticed the girl watching the training camps to leave and headed for her. The idea that sooner or later Kvain will understand that his wife is barren again did not give the Yusfir of calm. She understood that in this case everything would go to dust, especially if she did not have time to stop the daiquit. The emperor, meanwhile, considered the princess, concerned about her pallor. Then he, without hesitation, said that he would go with her in the carriage. And heading for the imperial crew, he said that he was not worried about the violation of the traditions of the North by this decision, but by the state of his wife. Near the doors of the carriage of the Kvan, he suddenly stood on one knee, holding out his hand with a hand. And then he explained the Yusfir shown by this sight. "I will help you get up. You should hurry, because the subjects will be very surprised to see the emperor on his knees." And all this was very strange, since nothing of the kind happened in a past life. Taking the princess by the hand, Kvanah Radon carefully looked her right in the eye. Using his palm and knee as additional steps, the US sphere easily climbed into the carriage. The princess thought if she experienced such feelings for the emperor in a past life, and is it good or bad, what is happening now? The road along which they were driving was calm and rather monotonous. Yusfir was silent and thought about her, watching the window behind the landscapes. The girl sincerely did not understand what it was about when Kvanov delicately said that she still looks sad. He explained that he could not understand whether she would be unhealthy or she thinks about the escape. The princess indignantly reacted to these words of the emperor. And then she said, "From now on and to the end of centuries, I am your legal wife, and this is my duty." Kvan was expressed by some sarcasm. "Duty? What a devotion! Are all the princesses like that? I suppose to kiss a man who is disgusting to you is also part of your duty?" Yusfir was surprised by this tone. "What is it with you, your majesty? You say as if you think that I hate you." Then Kvan was a little softened, saying that from the moment of their first meeting, he wanted to ask the girl one question. "Tell me, what do you think, princess?" Yusfir was embarrassed and replied that, in her opinion, Kvan, of course, was a hero. "I heard a lot about you, not only about the origin, but also about your achievements." But the emperor interrupted her, saying that he did not need the memorized response of Princess Ake. He is interested in who he was a skatel for the Yusfir. He looked into the girl's eyes. "Is I really a hero for you too?" Yusfir was going to answer Kvanah Radonsky, but was only able to start the phrase, because in her memory, there was an image of the emperor from a past life during a brutal and bloody war. And without waiting for an answer, Kvan concluded, "It seems that my wife is not able to overcome the fear of my husband. Since the ceremony, you are pale and thoughtful, as if everything that happens to you is disgusting." And, turning away to the window, the emperor quietly added, "I expected something like that." The princess excited what he heard. It even seemed to her that Kvan was ready to dissolve this marriage. Jumping to her feet, she tried to object. "This is a misunderstanding, your majesty. It is not at all about you. What are you doing, princess? Sit in place. At that moment, the horse was frightened, stood on its hind legs, and abruptly stopped the carriage, pulling it to the side. And the girl inside the carriage lost her balance and realized that she was falling without any support. She closed her eyes, and as if from afar, heard Kvan cried out, "Yusfir!" And then the princess opened her eyes and found herself tightly pressed to the broad chest of the emperor. And seeing that she came to her senses, her legitimate husband carefully asked, "You have not hurt?" At that moment, Yusufir realized what it means to feel peace and security. It was completely absorbed in these feelings. The voice of Kvanah returned the girl to reality. "Yusufir!" The emperor once again persistently asked if everything was fine with her and whether his wife was injured. But his question was interrupted in half, since the princess suddenly turned very pale and pressed against him even more. At that moment, the voice from the outside turned to Kvanah. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" The emperor asked the guardsman who appeared in the window of what happened, to which he apologized and explained that the tree suddenly fell, frightening the horse, and the guard would now clear the road. Kvanah was surprised and said that before on this road, nothing happened. But at that moment, he felt that something incomprehensible was happening to the girl in his hands. The princess was on the verge of consciousness, and her whole body was beaten by a small trembling. Daiquat said that the magic of the keepers belongs to the Silver Forest, so they cannot use it outside the Ahe. Yusufir hoped that his brother lied to her, but the princess felt that magic really leaves her. "In this state, I can't do anything if they attack us." And the familiar voice of the ghost of himself, from a past life, sarcastically asked if his brother stopped the carriage on the road in the forest. After all, it was Daiquat from the very beginning planned to kill you, and under this pretext to start a war. Poor Yusufir, you will again die, unable to influence anything. The princess tried her best to isolate herself from this unpleasant voice in her head. And again, the voice of Kvanah Radonsky, who called her by name, helped her return to reality. The girl opened her eyes and pressed her husband even more tightly, and the man pressed a sphere to himself and spoke quietly. "Breathe deeper. Everything is in order. Nothing terrible happened." Then the princess allowed herself to relax and cried from an excess of feelings and emotions. And Kvanah quietly but convincingly told her that no one and nothing could harm her anymore. Meanwhile, the motorcade continued his journey. The carriage swayed measuredly, and gradually Yusufir calmed down in her husband's arms, after which she herself did not notice how she almost fell asleep, forgetting all the troubles. After some time, closer to the night, the motorcade arrived in the port city. Yusufir woke up, and Kvanah unexpectedly asked the princess for forgiveness, which surprised the girl once again. Noticing this, he explained that he probably behaved very rudely towards her in most cases. The emperor lowered his eyes and said, "It just seemed to me, the Yusufir, that I was disgusting to you. I knew very well that a woman like you would hardly like this whole idea with a sudden wedding. But no, you can consider me a hero or someone else. I will not dissolve this marriage." And the emperor promised that the peace agreement between Ahea and Radon would remain in force, then added, "So you may not be afraid of me, at least not so much." Yusufir was shocked, and it seemed to her that she began to understand what feelings she was experiencing for this person. Indeed, in a past life, they could not communicate alone with each other. And only now, on the road, the girl found out what kind of man, Kvanah Radonsky. The princess replied to the emperor that everything she knew about his achievements and exploits was not a lie, since before dating she studied a large number of documentary information about the Emperor Radon. And initially, she read about his path and accomplishment only in order to know what to beware. But she found out that he saved people from the tyranny of the emperor and freed oppressed slaves. The more she found out, the more it seemed to her that Kvanah is not the same as rumors said about him. Remembering all this, Yusufir sincerely said that she was not afraid of him, and she was not hated by their marriage. The field of which she added, "And by the way, I thank you for the help of me recently rendered, Quanch." Yusufir was embarrassed, seeing his reaction to the appeal not according to the title, and, smiling, recalled that this was his initiative. The emperor was so moved by her revelation that it seemed temporarily lost speech. At that moment, the motorcade stopped, and the guardsman loudly reported to the emperor, "Your Majesty, we are in place." And the enthusiastic Usfir saw that they arrived in the port. She clung to the carriage window, trying to consider everything that surrounded them. Yusufir had never been to the sea before, so the girlfriend of the girl had no bounds. The picture, which opened her eyes, said that the future has nevertheless changed. "I have not died in a carriage, and the war between Akaya and Radon has not yet begun." Now she only had to deal with her feelings. But the princess had confidence that now everything would be fine. At the pier on the waves, a huge imperial sailboat swayed. On board, leaving the cabin and adjusting the tie, the young man said indignantly, "What does His Majesty think about?" He was emotional. Last month he told me about his future wife, and then literally escaped from Akaya immediately after the wedding. His assistant calmly reported. The Baron, according to the report, their carriage is already approaching. They have just traveled the forest. The Baron threw the coat deeper over his shoulders and concluded that in this case they should go ashore. He was eager to meet the Emperor and look at the new Empress. The picture that Yusfer saw when she left the carriage overwhelmed her. Kavani gave her a hand and asked me to be careful, because it was already completely dark. But the princess selflessly replied that she sees everything perfectly and took a step on the pavement. And at the same moment, the girl stumbled on the uneven surface of the stone. She screamed in fright, feeling that she was falling, but the Emperor's strong hand grabbed her. And the next instant, Yusfer was in the arms of her husband. The husband looked at her with care, which forced the girl to whisper excuses and gratitude. Kvanah took her hand, and with the second hand, he softly but confidently acquired by the shoulder, insisting that they would go further just like that. Yusfer was pleasantly struck by the concern of the Emperor. She tried to say that nothing terrible happened, but the man did not obey. At that moment, 3 came out of the darkness, one of which greeted the Emperor. "Your Majesty!" Kvanah, delighted, greeted him in response. "Aslin!" And Yusfer was surprised. "Is it the same?" Seeing the reaction of the girl, the young man came to his senses and apologized that he did not introduce himself right away. He bowed politely and said, "Baron Aslin Bainar is at your service, Empress. Once the Oslina family once lived in poverty, but he was able to return her wealth, thanks to his skills and instincts." Ignoring the status, Aslin saw the true essence in people, and Kvanah noticed when he was still an ordinary combat slave. He acted as a strategist and advisor to the future emperor during the revolution, and now he was one of the most influential people in the country. Yusfer remembered that when I was looking for information about Kvanah, the name of Baron Aslin was often mentioned in scrolls. For her, it was as amazing as to meet a character from the book. Meanwhile, the Baron politely asked Yusfer, "Can I help something, Your Majesty?" The girl was embarrassed, and Kvanah said that Aslin enters his close circle and also rightfully holds a position in the Ministry of the Interior. In response, the princess also politely introduced herself. "Very nice, Sir Aslin, Yusfer Katatel, and now Radon." Hearing the last note of the girl, the Emperor was pleasantly surprised and even froze, comprehending these words, to which Aslin easily pushed Kvanah and recalled that it was time to climb on board. The Emperor tried to hug his wife again. "I will help you go, the Yusfer," but she objected. "I can go myself, Kvanah." The surrounding spouses, people with interest, and light perplexity watched their dispute. Is the imperial couple already so close that it turns to each other by name? Yusfer was recalled first, realizing that in the presence of servants, such behavior does not correspond to etiquette. She quietly apologized to Kvanah, to which he loudly stated that his wife had the right to name him by name when he wanted. Baron Aslin recalled etiquette, but the Emperor abruptly interrupted him, recalling that he himself had just addressed him by name. Suddenly, the situation was heated, as Kvanah was flared up because of Aslin's words, and in a sharp tone explained his place to the assistant. The girl remembered the Emperor's attention to his road when he apologized as soon as he realized that she was not good, and also the fact that as soon as she stumbled out of the carriage, the attention of Kvanah instantly switched only to her, and realizing that the husband defends her, and not himself, Yusfer decided to take the situation into her own hands. "Kvanah!" The dispute was interrupted, and the girl feverishly tried to come up with the reason for his complete stop. "It seems that my head is dizzy. We can already go, please." Kvanah instantly forgot about Donkey, switching his attention to his spouse. He went to the princess and apologized for temporarily distracted his attention from her. After that, saying that he intends to take the Yusfer to her chambers, Kvanah easily grabbed the girl in her arms. Aslin, watching this, said quietly that it would not be worth going so far, and his assistants simply froze in bewilderment. And in the night silence all the way to the pier, only the slurred objections of the girl, dissatisfied with the movement, were heard. Soon, the procession climbed aboard the imperial sailboat, and Kvanah brought the princess to a spacious cabin. He delicately put the U-sphere on his feet and said that if she needs something, it is enough to report. Then he asked, "You have a red face. Is there a temperature by chance?" U-sphere instantly reported that everything is fine with her, without specifying that the complexion was caused by shyness from such close attention. And at that moment, the girl noticed a beautiful dress laid out on the bed. She was a loud surprised where it was here, and Kvan took it in his own way. "Don't you like it?" U-sphere hastened to assure her husband that the dress is great and that she loves this color very much. The princess thought about herself. Did someone give me such a beautiful dress at least ever? I would like to thank the person who made me such a wonderful gift. Kvanah replied that this was not necessary, because this dress is from him. This fact made the girl be embarrassed and blushing again. "Well, thank you, I will wear it." And the emperor, as a true man, emphasized that these are trifles, just a home dress for his wife. Then Kavanov said that since it was too late, the U-sphere could rest, and he will return, having finished urgent affairs. U-sphere clarified whether he would return to this cabin, and the emperor replied that it was obvious, since they are now a wife. Then he added that the spouses should live together. The princess realized that she had not thought about this moment of marital life, and from this day they will live in the same room. This circumstance forced us to recall another side of family life. Will we really spend our first wedding night here? Of course, she understood that this day sooner or later would have come, because now he and Klanast's wife. But the princess hoped that this would happen at least after their arrival in the Empire of Radon, when the moment comes to become the full wife of the emperor. It seemed that Kvan was in a hurry with the duties of family life too much. She tried to understand whether her legal spouse really liked, and at the same time, the girl scolded herself for imagination and doubt. Although I understood that the sooner the wedding night comes, the sooner it turns out that it was barren. The emperor seems to have read all these thoughts on his wife's face and understood her condition. He gently raised her head and carefully looked at the princess. After that, Kvan bowed to the princess, as if he wanted to consider something in her eyes, and then very tenderly and warmly kissed the girl on the lips. I will explain. The U-sphere, that we stay in the same room, does not mean that there will be something between us. I just thought that since we are now spouses, it would be strange to live in different rooms. Do not be afraid, princess. I will not touch you and my finger. I give the word, the emperor. I also think that this place is not the most suitable for our first wedding night. And besides, I'm not going to sleep with a woman who does not even want me. I assure you, U-sphere, that nothing of the kind will happen without your consent. And the girl, shocked by this confession, uncertainly asked how so, because he should want the heirs? To which Kvan was a little relaxed, and jokingly stated that he was flattered by the fact that his wife was thinking about such things from the first day. And he added that there is definitely nowhere to rush to them in this matter. If you are really worried about the heir, U-sphere, then at least pretend that you love me. Let our marriage now be fictitious, but I hope that in the future we will become a real couple. These words of the emperor became another discovery for U-sphere in the understanding of Kvanah Radonsky as a man. Meanwhile, the imperial sailboat was already far into the sea, heading towards the Empire of Radon. It was quite late, but Kvan was sitting in his working cabin, pondering everything that happened between him and the princess. He tried his best to understand what was happening in the soul of his legal wife. Her question about the heirs actually deeply struck the emperor, although he did not show it. Attempts to think over the strategy for building relationships caused a colossal tension in Quanah. He realized that family life was much more complicated than he initially expected. The Klanak's reasoning was suddenly interrupted by the loud voice of Baron Oslin. He burst into the office. "Why didn't you tell me that you are going to help Ahi with the strengthening of their borders? We didn't even discuss this. We took their keeper, which inflicted a serious blow to the defense of the country, and I just returned the debt." The Baron objected that he did not understand this marriage. Much easier to conquer Ahu than to send his soldiers to them for some princess. These words aroused anger among the emperor. "Be careful with words, Oslin. For me, the U-sphere is not just a princess from a small kingdom. Help with the army is negligible in comparison with the fact that I am ready to give it to be near." Oslin said that Kvan simply lost his head, to which the emperor advised him to cool down and not incur anger. In the big cabin where the princess saved, it was quiet. The calm sea measuredly swayed the imperial ship. Suddenly, U-sphere woke up, feeling a sharp nausea, and sat on the bed. She could not understand what was happening, and for what reason she became ill. The girl decided that these could be the consequences of a loss of magic. But the princess did not want Kvanah to notice that she had lost her strength. Yusufir decided to cope with this and headed for the door to ask for something from the maid. But in the doorway, she suddenly met Kvanah, who immediately noticed that his wife was not good. And, despite the girl's assurances that everything is in order with her, the man noted her pale look and offered to call a doctor. At that moment, the girl felt a sharp attack of nausea, although she did not eat anything the day before. Yusufir tried to pull herself together, but it turned out to be impossible. She grabbed the emperor so as not to fall, and she suddenly was sick. The man helped the girl resist her feet, holding her until the attack ended. When Yusufir came to her senses a little, she saw with horror that there was another serious trouble. The girl scaredly raised her eyes to her husband, waiting for an angry reaction, since the bright shirt of Emperor Radonsky was hopelessly spoiled. Kvanah calmly examined the affected item of his wardrobe, and then he told the girl that it was for this reason that it was worth calling the doctor. At this moment, the poor princess was seized with a small feverish tremor. Yusufir's eyes widened, and she focused in an attempt to cope with another misfortune. Before the eyes of the girl, everything swam, and she hardly held her balance. The princess uncertainly tried to apologize to the emperor. "Excuse me, Kvanah, how I dared to do that." In her head, the thought was spinning that she already showed herself rather painful from the very beginning, and now confirmed it with a sudden attack. The girl was worried that now Kvanah would definitely get angry and understand that he still should not marry her, and the ghost's malicious voice of the Yusufir, from a past life, began to be mockingly whipping that she finally ruined everything. "Is it really so difficult to please the emperor? Because you can't even use magic anymore." The ghost did not calm down. "What a reckless you are, Yusufir." Then the princess gathered with strength and said, "I will take responsibility, Kvanah, whatever you decide." He was surprised. What responsibility? Because nothing actually happened. And to the words of the girl about the spoiled shirt, Kvanah unexpectedly, in one confident movement, took off this item of clothes. Then he said with satisfaction, "You see, now everything is in order. There is no guilt in what happened. The princess and the dirty clothes can be removed, and the problem will disappear." Yusufir said uncertainly to her husband, "But because of me, your mood has deteriorated." And Kvanah, fastening the buttons of a fresh shirt, was again surprised. "Why did you get it?" He said that he was angry with a person who became a victim of marine illness, the top of stupidity, so he was completely calm. Just in case, the man checked whether the girl had no temperature, put the backside of the palm to her forehead. Kvanah, on the contrary, admitted that it was his fault when he forgot that the Yusufir on the ship was for the first time. The incident was rather the result of his indiscretion, so the man suggested simply forgetting about it. To relax his wife a little, he decided to tell the story of how he went next to the battlefield in his youth. Then Kvanah was pursued by one Gifor guy who wanted to join the revolution. This guy spoke ardent speeches that he would follow Kvanah until the end of his life and was ready to even die for him. But while they walked past the field and talked, this guy came across a head body, and then, unable to restrain himself, since such a nightmare spectacle was a novelty for him, the guy was sick right on Kvanah. Having made an intriguing pause, the emperor asked the girl can imagine who the guy was. It turned out that the second hero of this story was none other than Aslan. He found all this insanely nasty. This did not fit in the head of the Yusufir with the image of the emperor's assistant, that she thought that she misunderstood everything. But the brunette confirmed that they think about the same donkey, his right hand. A little grudgingly, recalling this situation from the past, Kvanah said that Aslan did not even apologize properly. On the contrary, a guy with green hair said that it was Kvanah who should apologize for showing him this horror. The girl grinned briefly, covering her mouth with her hand. This story really drove off her experiences. She, smiling brightly, said that she would never have thought that the Baron also has such a side. The man's heart missed a blow when he saw his wife sincerely smiled at him. He considered her charming. Taking himself in his hands, Kvanah said that, be that as it may, a lot of time passed, and Aslan does not even remember this. Therefore, he was sure that Yusufir would forget about this awkward situation only after a couple of floating. These were trifles. The Empress was struck that the husband was so sweet and restrained, and considered what happened only to little things. She was sincerely surprised that, comparing the situations, for Kvanah, that marine illness, that a severed head, were trifles. It was scary to imagine what the guy's life was, since such a cruel spectacle seemed to him a trifle. Now, traveling with him, Yusufir was glad that Kvanah could recognize the present, and not his image of a tyrant and despot. In the deck, towards the cabin of the marital couple of rulers, the young guy fled, clearly in a hurry. He slowed down and stopped only just before the entrance. With a trembling hand, he knocked on the door. Kvanah, just by knocking on the door, guessed who was from the guest. Obviously, he was waiting for the appearance of a subject.